But oh, you have been watching, of course, the strikes, and one of them appears to have been settled this morning. That's the strike between the writers' union and a lot of other people that are out on strike, allied with them, and the powers in Hollywood. They appear to have settled it. It's not yet tight, but it's enough that some people are going back to work immediately on the basis of it. And of course, in Canada, Ford and the UAW have just inked an agreement. Yes, kind of a surprise. That one came a little bit early. And of course, in the U.S., the UAW, the United Auto Workers, is taking it kind of easy on Ford because they say that Ford's giving them some of the major concessions, including a cost of living adjustment, which is a big deal to that union right now. While GM and what used to be Chrysler are still holding out. Now, as you look at all this structure, my friend, what do you see? Do you see some progress, or do you see signs of just the old system going on? What do you see? How is all this occurring to you, my friend?
I see a lot of progress. I am starting to see that the unions are again asserting their worth, which I think is very, very important, and they do so. Sadly, I don't think enough Americans are fighting to be a part of the union, which I think every single American worker should be a union worker, bar none. Every single American worker should be a union worker. Corporations, they have their unions. They don't call them unions. They call them organizations, or the Chamber of Commerce, or they have all kinds of
Commerce, right? Or
right.
Congress.
Exactly. I love that. I love that, Steve. Our Congress. So what workers need to do is come as a block. And I tell you, I'm still waiting for us to execute a national strike. I mean, a complete national strike, except for doctors and police officers, etc., to remind all employers that employees are stakeholders. And just like I can know whatever I know, but I can't fix my car. Therefore, we need to learn about what equity is. Nobody's job is should supersede somebody else's.
Now, we're going to get to the questions of inflation. Now, this is an important conversation this morning. It's one we don't have very often, which is the whole question about the economy, whether the economy is after all a giant conspiracy of corporations to steal your money, or whether it's just kind of the way capitalism works when it's a somewhat enlightened capitalism system that needs maybe a lot more enlightenment. As by way as a radical moderate, I would certainly go with that second part. Still needs a lot more enlightenment. Okay, Egberto, I have a funny feeling you've got some things to say about that.
You nailed it. Actually, Steve, you nailed it. Our economic system is, in fact, a capitalist system. You're absolutely right. And in a capitalist system, it says that the only people of worth are those who have capital, and everybody else are worked by some sort of a contract with the capital system. I mean, it's only a step above what slavery used to be. And what I call it now is antiseptic slavery. And what I mean is the following. You go out there and you work for a company and you bring in a lot of income for that company, but you have a contract that says, whether it's implied or physical, you have a contract that says this is how much you make. That company does superbly well. And all the spoils go to the stockholders. All the spoils go to the employer. All the execs get their bonuses. The employees get nothing. A few of the exec level may get a few bonuses, etc. But under our current capitalist system, the employees are no more than high-level slaves. I mean, I know people don't like to hear that, but it's what we are. And the example and what proves this point is that over the last 40 years, when we have removed the controls on the negativity of capitalism, the income inequality and the wealth disparity has shifted to just a few. I mean, there's nothing like having evidence out there, proof that is what a system brings. And until we get over that glory, hallelujah, and somehow trying to equate capitalism with freedom and capitalism with democracy, we have failed. If we don't get that to the people, we've failed them, because there is no way that we can say The people who own capital determine where you're going to work or what you're going to do, and then and management decides what to do, and somehow call that freedom. It is not. And
now I'm going to stop you for a second.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to let you go, but there was going to be a break somewhere. You're as bad as I am. If we wait for a break, it's going to be a long wait. Hey, buddy, that's all right, my friend. You're a talk show host, and that's what you're supposed to be doing. Look, my friend, some people would say that as you look back at the people who basically created the theoretical underpinnings for the capitalist system, they did not say that the only people that count are the people who have the capital. What they said is that the assignment of resources is much more efficient using this system they call capitalism. And all of those people, all of those core people, and almost all the ones since, with the exception of some people that were big, that preceded Mr. Reagan. Now, it goes back a lot further than that, obviously, in the 20s and long before that. But the bottom line is, but none of those people said that labor doesn't count or is not an equal player in this kind of game. The question is that people, they were counting on people's self-interest, including the risk, enormous risk that they were taking, because as I think you know, close to 90% of all new businesses fail. And that includes big ones. To go for a fair length of time, the ones that look like they're making a lot of money, many of them don't even exist a decade later. It is how it is. But all those things, including risk, that's going to be handled by the capitalist system, assuming, and that was the thing that began to be an assumption later on, that there are some constraints on that. You and I think, me as a radical moderate, and you as, how would you describe yourself? How would you describe yourself?
I'm a left-wing liberal who believes in looking at evidence.
Okay, that's a pretty reasonable status. And in general, you have to look at what the results have been. And unless you are, I have a father-in-law who's an extremely wealthy man, and he does that by turning companies around. He was in President Reagan's cabinet. He did a lot of things, and he's accomplished some extraordinary things. He's helped build the U.S. space industry. He's done a lot of astounding things that involved stupendous risks. And some of them, it came out of his pocket. In fairness, he's accomplished a lot in terms of generating jobs over the years. But there's no question that he's sitting in a pretty comfortable house out on Long Island right now. You can guess where. And that's because he's earned the money that as he's in retirement, he doesn't have to worry about whether Social Security is going to cover it or not. But if you look at the jobs he created and the companies that he saved, a lot of those people would say, that guy, he had some sort of magic, and somehow he managed to put things together when everybody else was shaking their hands and saying it's all done, it's over, and it's all lost, and I'm not going to have a job. But somehow he managed to put it together. How do we reward people like that for taking risks unless we allow them to have some say in the gain that comes back?
Who was this guy?
Or where does
again?
that money that's going to be, in this case, it's my father-in-law.
Okay, let me talk about your father-in-law because
I'm not going to use his name. Yep,
that's fine, but I want to personalize this because I think it's so. I think when we talk about things in the abstract, what happens is people don't see the big picture. Now I am talking to your father-in-law, somebody that I cannot call an evil, selfish person. The way we'll talk about.
So by the way, let me add something. He lives fairly modestly. He doesn't have a gigantic mansion.
No. I get it.
He does have a house in Colorado, one in Florida.
I get it.
A pretty nice one out on Long Island. Go ahead.
I get it. I am happy that your father-in-law was able to do what he did and create a lot of jobs. Absent your father-in-law, another person's father-in-law would have come about and done the same things he did and then used the services and knowledge and equity.
Not.
No, but let me finish. Let me finish what I mean. What I mean is the following.
Go ahead.
What I mean is that nobody is an island. I remember when I was growing up and I could do things. I could do magical things. And I thought, I am so darn good, right? And then I came to the United States and I went to the University of Texas and realized there were 50,000 other good people out there. In other words, 50,000 other people that could do what I did. And it was like, oh my God, I guess I'm not all that special after all. And what I say to that is whenever we look at Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos and all these guys as special, what we forget is by them existing, they have prevented the other one of them to have existed. In other words, in the way things occur in society, there was going to be a need for the space thing, and if the values exist within the society that can create that, somebody would have stepped out to do it. And then all the workers whose brains your father-in-law used, because your father-in-law had an idea and a structure, and then he used the brain power, he used the intellect of hundreds and thousands of other people. And when I say hundreds of thousands of people, that's what I mean, because for him to have done what he has done, he was dependent on the composite knowledge of people throughout the centuries of people paying taxes to create that knowledge. He is a great aggregator, right? And a lot of capitalists are great aggregators of things, right? Now, having aggregated other people's knowledge, does that mean they should have billions? I will argue no, because that billions is piecewise stealing of the aggregation of others. So I am saying, I don't say that they should make good money. I think they should, because you're correct that it is an incentive to get things done. But what we have now is completely obscene.
I also agree that there are many issues, politically and otherwise, where I don't agree with my father-in-law. However, I also understand something. How a rope is made is an important part more than just the strands. If we try to use a large rope to keep a ship close to the dock and it's just made up of a lot of strands, it's not going to work real well.
Right.
An awful lot of knowledge and craft goes into making that thing.
Agreed.
I will guarantee you from my own experience that what people do and what people see oftentimes is not simply an aggregate of the knowledge that was passed along to them by other people, unless you want to include their education, what they chose to remember, and how they creatively interpreted it.
That's exactly what I wanted to do,
what you're doing
sir.
right now on this show. You're using English, which is obviously not something that was created by you and has been passed along to you. However, I think we would both agree that you use it creatively, and I think you and I, one of our goals is to try to have our sentences, in some cases, be something no one's ever said exactly that way.
But Steve, let's go further. Let me butter you up a little bit, okay? Let me butter you up a little bit, okay?
Don't need to, but go ahead.
No, but what I'm saying, this is important. I am an engineer, writer of books, all that kind of stuff, right? I got into radio after becoming an activist and doing certain things, right? I listened to Rourke. I've listened to his tonality to help me with delivery. I listen to you because you are one of the ultimate guys who know how to use a mic and get listened to on a mic. And I am getting good at what I do, not because of Egberto, but because of the composite, the aggregation of what I've gotten from a lot of other people. So what I'm saying is,
but you're choosing all those influences, my friend.
But
go ahead, buddy.
I may be choosing all those influences, but absent those influences, I would not have chosen. So what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that Bill Gates does not deserve millions of dollars. He does deserve millions of dollars. He does not deserve billions of dollars, because that is skimmed off of the millions of people that worked for him. Okay,
Egberto, let me add something. So I'm going to stop you for a second. Now, there are places where you and I would probably agree on things, but in general, in the more broad strokes of it, might not. So let's stop for a second.
Yes.
If we look back at the economy of the United States, or for that matter, of the United Kingdom and for a lot of other areas, we see in many cases, some years ago, because of taxation, because of a lot of other influences, that there was a limitation for how many times the multiple was between an average worker and the average CEO that ran that company. For that matter, in some cases, the people who owned the companies, we're including those being the stockholders who either individually or as a mass, say as an investment trust in charge of an insurance company or in charge of a retirement fund or a lot of those things. All those people are still made up of people. And of course, they have to have money to make that whole system work. But let's stop for a second. What I'm getting at is, has the multiple gotten incredibly out of control? There are a lot of people who would say yes. There are a lot of people who would be listening to me right now who would say, no. This gives it free rein. Well, that's what politics is all about. And I have a funny feeling there's about to be a swing that's going to put some correction back into this. But the question again becomes, now when you and I start talking about somebody who takes an enormous amount of risk and whose knowledge and whose sense of how to weave those bits of fiber that we call a rope, and in this case, the net that we all live in, and it is not a simple thing, as we both know, whether it's capitalism or whether it's some sort of a planned economy, of which, by the way, modern capitalism is a mix. But the point is, if you have all of those things working together, then there are profound decisions that are of great work of originality, whether we realize that or not. The soft landing that we just had as we came out of inflation and the best classical way to solve the problem was, of course, working with interest rates and other things. But that soft landing we have, which now may be somewhat disturbed by a big period of labor activism, the point is all that took individuals making, in some cases, rather inspired decisions that included risks of their jobs and risks politically of the people who put them in those positions, other things. But it was not something, frankly, that had ever really happened before. A lot of people don't look at what just happened and realize you are living through a rather historic economic event. And it has a sense that the theory and the computers and the things that back it up and the things that make it possible, all those things have had some breakthroughs. And maybe also, I think you underestimate the degree to which capitalists, in many cases, have enormous compassion for the people who work for them. Now, is that always the case? Of course it's not. When we start looking at large organizations, you could choose some of whom you think it isn't. I'm not so sure I would choose Jeff Bezos as one of the examples of capitalism gone amok, because although he's making a chunk of money, the creation of Amazon was a fascinating and continuing saga. As you know, there's a brand new book out right now about Elon Musk, and it looks at him in great depth. The same guy, by the way, who did the biography, of course, for Mr. Jobs, the man who created Apple. The interesting point of all this is that the book ultimately refers to him in an interesting way as a man-child, and it's not meant to be some sort of an insult or anything that makes him smaller. What they're basically saying is there are things about Elon Musk that we might not agree with, but those are some of the traits that make him extremely creative in what he does. He breaks things and then makes them work together. Let's go back. Do me a favor real quickly. Rico, grab your mic for a second, buddy. You're taking all these calls to them. Who should we be going to right now? Okay, you said something about Kevin for a minute. What was Kevin's question for Egberto?
Kevin had to go to work,
so he
couldn't stay on. And all I got from him was he had a question for Egberto on his stance on the self-employed.
I love the idea that the caller mentioned the sole proprietor. Sole proprietor is what I call true and real and free enterprise. I believe in free enterprise. I don't believe in capitalism. I don't believe capitalism is the efficient allocation of resources. If you doubt it, look at our medical system, our medical sphere. It is a bastion of capitalism, and it definitely doesn't work as well as it does in Canada, France, Taiwan, and these other places.
Okay, but I'm going to stop you for a second. I don't think it is a bastion of capitalism. I think it's actually a bastion of what we might call a corrupted capitalism, where a lot of influence has come in to say, okay, we got to protect the interest holders, and this is the way it's working, and we're going to keep it that way because it benefits those interest holders. I'm not sure, by the way, in the case of
Milton Friedman,
companies, so it may not be a deal with the devil that doesn't pay off.
Let me just say,
we get some rather extraordinary drugs. Go ahead, buddy.
Let me just say that Milton Friedman, the latest god of capitalism, says that exactly how the medical system is running is what capitalism is supposed to do. Do whatever is necessary to maximize the value and profits of the shareholders. Be damned the environment. Be damned the employee. The executives have no responsibility other than to
not an awful lot of people who would say Milton Friedman is a god of capitalism. But keep going, buddy.
Well,
keep going.
Chile, all of that they would, but and the Chicago boys. But anyway, let's just say the other quick. So I love that the caller asked about the sole proprietor. The sole proprietor is the bastion of free enterprise because he is the one that really works the stuff. Capitalism says that we create jobs by abstraction. What I mean by that is you have somebody who creates a company. Eventually, that company is capitalized. That capitalization is in the form of shares. The shares go to people who do no work. It's called passive income for them. And based on what they want to see in the increase.
Wait. Why are they shareholders? Why, Egberto, why are they shareholders? If they did nothing, why are they shareholders?
Because they want to make some money off of somebody else's labor.
No. Where did the money that they're investing to become shareholders? Where did that come from? Did it come from the sky?
No,
did they go out and did they rob a liquor store for it? Where did it come from?
Let me tell you, some people earned it, some people inherited it. Most people now inherited the money that's invested in the stock market. So most of the value in the stock market is from people who have inherited money or of the wealthy class. So I mean, that's what I'm saying. Right when I talk about it being a slave relationship, that I know you don't like the word slave, but if you take a look at who owns the capital markets,
I can accept it. I can accept that as a part of the discussion of the politics of it. But let me ask you a question: do you have any statistics that show, because I certainly question that on my basis of my own knowledge of economics, that you would say that most of the money that's in the stock market right now comes from people who inherited the money.
Yes, you can.
That is
I can
so
tell you
radically wrong.
I can tell you where you can go to get it.
Begin to get to it. Yep, go ahead.
You can go to a website called Who Owns America or something like that. I'll send the website, but there's a website that shows who owns what amount of capital in the country, right? And as it turns out, most, they would like to say, oh, retirement funds own a lot of capital, etc. It turns out that that is not the case. We have yet to understand the wealth of the very few in this country. And when we start to understand how much pilfering actually occurs, people start to get a different opinion. It's like, oh my God, like, let's just look at West Texas and who owns all the land in West Texas. A few families, hundreds of thousands of acres of land. How the hell did they get that? So, I mean,
well, there's no question they inherited that, although many cases that goes back to the 17th or 18th or 19th century. Let's put it that way. Okay, gotcha.
And that's the history of our capitalism. The history of our capitalism.
But it just so happens that that's a rare situation. They own some land under which there was a resource that ultimately is being produced. Let me ask you a quick question. Egberto,
yes.
Looking back at all this, when you look at the wealth of a corporation that's supposedly owned or controlled by somebody, I suspect you and I both know, however, that doesn't mean they actually own all that stuff. They don't own those giant machines. They don't own those employees. They ultimately have some control over the direction it takes. But it's not quite the same if you happen to be a billionaire owner such as the man who created Amazon. Right. He doesn't actually own all the things that are Amazon. His wealth, in theory, shows that, but it's not quite the same thing as me owning a house or my car or whatever. And it does involve assets that create stupendous employment.
But again, that
is something that he did create. Keep going.
That is a part that I disagree with. Because look, you remember, I think you mentioned earlier that Elon Musk is innovative, right? Elon Musk, for those who, I'm an engineer, I can tell you categorically, Elon Musk is not innovative. Elon Musk can't write sufficiently a line of code. Elon Musk doesn't sufficiently understand dynamics. That what Elon Musk did with a suborbital flight, I found amusing. Since when I worked for NASA, we put a Skylab, not a Skylab, a space station up there. He barely touched space. Let's be real. Now that he's sending some trips over to the station, look, none of that was his technology. All of that is our technology. So Elon Musk isn't this innovative guy. This guy had the resources given to him, many by the government and others. The electric cars he didn't create, right? No
question about that. By the way, his passion actually is the space industry. By the way, as a person who I think is reasonably trained in that industry, I disagree with you strongly about the breakthrough thinking that went into many of the things that Elon Musk is doing with SpaceX and the other things he's doing. In many cases, it did involve breaking a lot of eggs, and it turned out that breaking those eggs was exactly the way to move forward. And it is an act of creation that I think the fact that he was able to talk industry and government into providing some of the funding greatly understates the degree of innovation.
But
and
my brother,
clear thinking he put into that. I think you're greatly underestimating.
I know you said that, but let me get. Can I give an example?
Wait, hold on a second, because I'm going to finish this one sentence. You and I differ in one other thing. You have some sense that there is a historic force that creates these things, and it would have happened again anyway, one way or another. Somebody would have done what he did had he not done it. You and I disagree strongly on that. I believe in the impact of individuals is far greater than you believe it is. But go ahead, my friend. It's fair.
Okay, let's give an example. I am yet to know what he's innovated. In other words, he's doing what he did with us by landing a craft on the ground that we used to land in the ocean is something that Russia has been doing for decades. What I'm trying to say is there's nothing that Elon Musk has put together that other countries and other people hasn't. It's just come to America. And too often when we see something come to America, it's done in America, because of our not knowing what is happening elsewhere, we think, oh my God, look how great it is. Russia has been landing spaceships at locations physically for a long time. electric cars with the type of
now,
battery
we'll
system.
explain that for a second, because I think we're getting off on a little bit of a
Yeah, you're
dead
right.
end
Yeah.
here. But for a second,
Yeah.
I want you to stop for a second.
Yeah.
Explain to me what Russia, because I'm very familiar with what Russia did. I want to ask you what you think Russia did that equates to what Elon Musk is doing with SpaceX today. What did they? Tell me how they returned boosters and they returned other hardware and thereby made the whole system enormously more efficient. Tell me how Russia was doing that, because they didn't.
Well,
They could
Russia
bring
was
back payloads.
landing its
That's
capsules.
a very different thing. But
Right. Russia was landing its capsules on land from the time we were landing capsules in the ocean. Right.
But you know,
moving
but that's not the same thing. Bringing back a small capsule and everything else is thrown away is a big difference. Go ahead, buddy.
The booster, creating the technology to land the booster on ground is nothing that Boeing hasn't done in the automation of a plane. I guess what I'm saying is these technologies are not innovative. They're something that's been done, and he's a great aggregator. Look, I have nothing to lose for not liking Elon Musk. What I'm saying is, I wish that the reporting on Elon Musk made more sense in that it gave people, not make people believe he was some sort of a god, but that he's just another good capitalist who knows how to aggregate stuff. But the things that he's done, there's absolutely nothing innovative he has done. He's using all of our technologies we've developed and been using at NASA for some time.
We're almost to the end of the show. Egberto, it's not fair, but I'm going to have to throw it to you for 1 minute, my friend, and we'll continue this conversation.
Oh, that's all I need.
This is an interesting morning. I've been with the listeners this morning. But go ahead, my friend. Yeah, go.
Yeah, Lane was actually and nailed it. Capitalism to concentrate the wealth and get certain things done in a focused manner. But what I say is that when you have that control of capitalism, it is no longer capitalism. It is something else. So, I mean, my problem is that in pure capitalism, that what occurs, it has no soul. But what Lane spoke about, this piece of capitalism, this piece of socialism is a different model altogether. And I think that's what we need to work towards.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.